Welcome, everybody. Oh, can't see the top of my head. There you go. How's that better? Good. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. If you've joined us before, thank you for coming back. If you've seen Rachel speak before, you know that you are in for a treat. There's a lot of knowledge crammed in that giant cranium of hers, and she's going to share some of that with you today and help you continue making the transition from Universal Analytics to GA4. What we've got going on today, introductions and roles. Rachel and Steve, there's your introductions, sort of. Simple agenda. There's two big sections here: review of UA and GA4, how they're alike, how they're differences in terms of how they're different in terms of events. And then we're going to walk through, and this is where it gets deep, is talking about migrating events, how to make sure you've got an inventory of what you're working with and how you're getting to what's next. And then we're going to open it up for questions. And by the way, don't be shy about asking questions. If you have a pertinent question along the way that makes perfect sense on a slide, throw it out there. We may answer them live, but probably we're going to save those until the end. And we'll address as many as we can. If we can't get there during the show, we'll follow up via email with those. I am Steve Krull. If you don't know already, I am what they call the lead troublemaker around here. With me is Rachel Loutos. She also causes plenty of trouble. And then Kyle, who you don't see right now, he's kind of the cleanup crew. Rachel and Steve make messes, and I'm kidding. Kyle sets all of this stuff up. His work behind the scenes is second to none. Getting these things off the ground is setting us up for success.
Cool. Okay. So I'll take over from here. Thanks, Steve. So like Steve mentioned, today we're just going to start out by reviewing some of the event basics. So, what events are, their differences, and then we'll move on to a basic strategy of how you're going to start thinking about your tag migration. And we know that migrating is a really daunting task. It was for me, and I do this for a living, right? So we're hoping that by breaking this down into smaller steps, this will help you get started and move through the process without continuously second guessing yourself like I did when I first started doing this. So without further ado, let's jump into some of the basics. So what are events and how are they collected? An event is just a user interaction on your site. It could be something like downloading a file or clicking on a call to action, anything like that a user is going to be performing on your site. And how are these collected? So they're collected by placing a tag on your website, and then they fire when that specific action is taken. And there's a few different ways that people can implement these tags on a website. One is through hard coding on your website, and you need developer help for that. So the developer is actually going into the back end of your website and adding that tag. Another option, which we're going to talk a lot more about, is going to be using Google Tag Manager. So using Google Tag Manager is a much more user-friendly way to implement. It's easier to update tags without developer help for the most part. And then the last way is GA4 actually has some automatically collected events. So we'll touch on those, but just know that when you're adding your GA4 measurement ID onto your site, these events are going to start collecting by default.
And everybody knows the importance of events on your site. It's how you understand what the user's doing, what they're downloading, where they're going. One of my quick recommendations on that last slide is hard code as a last resort, only if you have nothing else at your disposal, because updating it means you're going to need the same developers to help you update a tag. And some of that stuff gets lost in the shuffle. And it's just as easy, if you will, not easy, but it's better to implement GTM because it's going to give you much more ease of use long-term in terms of managing your tags.
It's much more flexible. Absolutely. So we actually even have a developer that is on this call that works for us, and he still utilizes GTM. So just know that kind of going forward. Either way is fine. We prefer GTM, so we'll be talking about that mostly. So before we kind of jump into further what the differences are, I wanted to talk a little bit about the UA and GA4 event models. A little bit of extra information for you, if you will. So UA focuses mostly on hit types. So page hits, event hits, e-commerce hits. you'll notice that even events are classified as a hit in UA. And in GA4, we need to reframe our mind a little bit. So GA4 is much more event based, with the principle that any interaction can be captured as an event. So this means that things that were previously considered to be hits in UA are now considered to be events in GA4. GA4 has no distinction between hits and events.
This breaks my brain a little bit, Rachel, when you talk about hits versus events. So when I'm thinking about UA and I'm thinking about creating an event in UA, I could have created an event based on page views in UA or no? So I could, but it's changing the way I'm thinking about it. Event is moved up to the top level and everything else falls underneath now as a parameter, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, and we're definitely going to jump into that. I would say, for this, it's mostly clarity on terminology, at least for me. So in UA, you're going to see hits being used a lot, and in GA4, you're going to be seeing a lot more the terminology of events being used. So just know that that is the switch that's being made, and that's pretty much all you need to really know, kind of, at least for the purpose of this call.
Awesome, thank you.
Cool. Okay, so before we get into the differences, I just wanted to quickly review the GA4 event types. So there's 4 different event types that GA4 has: automatic, enhanced, recommended, and custom. And you're going to want to work through these in this order. So automatic. This one's really easy because, again, as soon as you add your measurement ID to your website, these events are automatically created for you or collected for you. Enhanced, this is also fairly easy, only because you can toggle these on and off in the GA4 platform itself with just one click. So there might be some additional small configurations that you need to do depending on how your website is set up, but in general, they're going to be really minimal. The main one is just internal search. So if you have a search function on your website, you're going to want to double check to make sure that you don't need any additional configurations there. Recommended, these are events that Google thinks people should track, but they require additional context to be meaningful. So they're not automatically set up. An example of this is purchase. So think about when you're going through an e-commerce process, right? Some clients, when you click submit, deliver you to a thank you page when that order is submitted. Others might not have that thank you page, so you might need to rely on tracking, the purchase button, for instance. So even though purchase is a recommended event, there's differences in websites, which is why it's not automatically set up for you. And then the last one is custom. So this category is for anything that doesn't fall in one of the 3 above categories. They're events that you define and you collect that are specific to your business. So I gave the example of donate. Let's say that, maybe you don't have e-commerce, or even you do have e-commerce, but you have a donate option as well. That's not going to be in Google's recommended list. And don't worry, I will provide those to you. When you download this PowerPoint, actually, each one of these orange underlined words is a link. So we've provided Google's links directly to you. But yeah, so like a donate would not be part of that recommended events list. This is going to be specific to your business, so it'll fall as into the custom events category.
Is there Rachel, thinking about the number of events that especially the automatic and enhanced and even the recommended events, certainly they need more context. It sounds like Google's built a ton more of this stuff in for us to help remove some of the thinking that we had to do before creating events before. Exactly.
Yeah. So previously, we had a lot of clients that were very interested in knowing how far users scroll down on a page so that they would know, is the content I'm producing engaging, or are people not even scrolling down to the bottom, and why am I wasting my time on this? That is now one of the enhanced measurement events that with a simple click, you'll be able to measure automatically. So you're right, GA4 is adding in a lot more functionality from that standpoint.
Super cool.
And then obviously we have this beautiful flow chart over here on the right-hand side. So I tried to make this as easy as possible in the way that you'll want to think about each event. So the way that you're going to work through this is obviously top to bottom, and you're going to ask yourself, is the event automatically tracked by GA4? And if it is, you're going to keep that using that automatic event. If not, you're going to ask yourself, is the event tracked by enhanced measurement? And if yes, you're going to use enhanced measurement. If no, you keep going down and you're going to ask yourself if you can find the event on Google's recommended event list. Again, right there, right? If it is on that list, you're going to use the recommended naming convention from the GA4 documentation. And if not, that is when you're going to create a custom event. Okay, so now let's look at the differences between UA and GA4 events. There's one really big one, right? So in UA, events have 3 different levels: category, action, and label. So the purposes of these levels are to give you additional information and context about the event, and to group these different events together that makes sense to do so, right? So for example, I took a screenshot of the BFO website. Let's say someone clicks on the webinar link. In UA, you might have an event category for navigation, since it's in our navigation, and an action of resources, so where webinars falls under, right? And then your label could be webinar, where the user actually clicked. But the problem comes when in GA4, you realize that GA4 has no notion of category, action, or label. There's only one level, and that's event name. So for this reason, it's really important to rethink how you're collecting data in terms of GA4. For that same event in GA4, you might have the event name as navigation, but you still don't know where in the navigation someone clicked. And you have to think to yourself, how am I going to get that additional information into GA4? So you need some additional context, right? And the way that you're going to do that in GA4 is through parameters. So parameters are just additional pieces of information that can further specify the action that a user took or add further context to that event. So let's take the example of a purchase event. A purchase event fires when someone completes a transaction on your site. And in GA4, we would only see that a purchase event happened. We would just see purchase, right? We would get no other context without the use of parameters. But with parameters, you can get additional information like products purchased or price or quantity, or if there was like a discount or coupon used. All of those pieces of information can be collected in GA4 through the use of parameters. And what's awesome is that Google and GA4 actually allows you to pass 25 parameters per event. So we can see in this model here for UA, underneath this hit event, we've got category, action, label, and then value, which is the number that might be associated with a conversion. But in GA4, it's not like that at all, right? So there's no like hierarchy. It's more additional pieces of information that are being passed through a parameter. And so I know that this is really difficult to imagine and to think about kind of in your head, but I found this really great example online that kind of helped me change the way I think about parameters. And in their example, they took a Five Guys receipt, since a lot of people understand burgers more than data, but in this
Guilty.
receipt, yeah, right? In this receipt, we can see that, the top level is a cheeseburger, right? So that might be your event name. Now, underneath it, this is a highly customizable restaurant that you can go to, and you can select which ingredients that you want on your burger. And your parameters would be underneath indented, and that's going to be your ingredients that are listed underneath. So additional context to what is currently happening up here, right?
I'm dreaming about our ability to report on the parameters below the event going forward, and looking at all of the little nuanced differences in terms of what people are doing in that specific event. And that data to me becomes very, very powerful.
Totally. Yeah. And just like you said, it starts to look pretty good when you can only get a few bits of information from UA compared to GA4, where you can pass 25 different types of parameters, right? So you can get a lot of information within GA4.
That's a lot of power.
All right. And then you might be thinking, like, how do I get these parameters to be collected? And are they automatically collected? Some are, but most aren't. So there's, and we provided this list here of the automatically collected parameters. Some are collected by default, just when you're putting that measurement ID on your website. For example, things like page title, language, page refer, those are all automatically collected. However, most aren't going to be automatically collected, and they'll still need to be configured. And the easiest way that you're going to be able to do that is to implement your tags through Google Tag Manager. So when you're setting up a GA4 tag, this is a screenshot of Tag Manager. You have the ability at the bottom to add your event parameters in there. So this is where you'll be able to specify those additional pieces of information. So for example, let's take an add to cart. You don't need to specify the page where the add to cart happens, because page title is automatically collected. But what you might want to pass instead are things like the item's brand or price. Okay, so we've got the basics down, right? Let's go through a few steps to migrate your UA events to GA4. So,
warning, technical road ahead.
Slightly technical. I kept it high level.
Yeah, you did a great job of that. I know where I am on this, and I just want to give people a heads up that this is the time to sort of think and dive into this stuff and follow along in terms of where we're going from here, because there's a lot of really good information and insight about how to manage to this going forward for you.
Yeah. And I think, before I started moving UA tags over to GA4, it's a scary thing to look at the number of tags that you have and realize you have a lot of work ahead. But by breaking it up into different steps is going to be really helpful. So what we want to handle first are going to be the easy things. So we're going to start with the automatic and the enhanced measurement events. Then we're going to move to Google Tag Manager, and we're going to audit those tags. Then we're going to set up a GA4 event sheet from your audit. And lastly, we're going to implement a tagging matrix for continued clarity on your tags. So in total, there's 3 different spreadsheets that we're going to be setting up. But don't worry, we have the template. It's just one spreadsheet, 3 different tabs, and you can download it after this webinar.
They are yours for free.
Okay. So let's jump into the easy stuff. So we're going to handle 2 out of the 4 event types for GA4. First thing you're going to do, create your GA4 property, right? You gotta have a place to put all of that data. So you create your GA4 property, and then you're going to put your measurement ID on your website. That is going to automatically start collecting those default events. 1 already knocked off the list. Then let's move to enhanced measurement events. Within the admin section of GA4, there's going to be 2 columns. You're going to look underneath that property column and look for data streams. When you click into that data stream, you're going to find the enhanced measurement section. It's going to look like this. And all you're going to do is you're going to toggle it on. So right now, you see that it's on with that blue check mark. This is going to start collection of those enhanced measurement metrics. Now, if you want a full list, you can click on that gear right underneath it here. And again, you'll get a full list of everything that is that's going to be collected. There really shouldn't be too much additional configuration. Again, the main one is just site search, even if you even have that on your website. And if you do need to enable anything with internal search, there's a little link down underneath that internal search event once you click on this gear, and you're just going to follow those directions that Google gives you. So pretty easy. We've knocked 2 right off the bat. From here, we're going to move to Google Tag Manager and address the current tags that we have live. So the next step in the process is really going to be to clean up your Google tag or your GTM container. So any of those tags that you currently have live, we're going to audit them. And again, this is kind of where it gets like to be a lot, right? Since a lot of companies create tons of tags, but they don't use all of that data. Our goal through doing this is to limit the number of tags that we have to migrate and to lessen the GTM container load on your site, which also has SEO benefits. But further than that, we also want to make sure that we know why a tag is firing. We want to know specifically where and what is being measured when we see that tag in GA. And then we're going to keep a better record of our tags in the future. So we're going to go through a quick audit process. One is just going to be creating, one of those 3 spreadsheets that I talked about. We're going to call that the tagging Google sheet, the current tagging sheet. We're going to set up that sheet. We're going to then start testing the tags, and we're going to end up with a finalized list of the UA tags that we need for migration.
Great spot to clean up your tags and to focus on how you want to move forward. There's probably a lot of legacy tags that might not even be beneficial for you anymore. So think about when you're staring at those. If you don't know what it is, yes, there might be other people on your team to chat with to say, hey, Bob, do you know what tag this is? If you don't know it, purge it.
Exactly.
It's one of those, if you can't figure out what it is, clean it up. If somebody screams, bring it back.
Exactly. Yes, that's completely the process that we need to take. It can be difficult to understand, should I keep this or should I delete it, or do I need to adjust it? So, what we're doing here is first going to set up those sheets, and then we'll help you identify what needs to be kept or what needs to be deleted. So first, we again need to understand what that tag is measuring. And again, the easiest way is going to be by creating a sheet with all of your tags in it. So in order to do that, what you're going to do is you're literally going to go to Google Tag Manager, and you're going to go to the tags sheet or the tags page, and you're just going to copy all of your tags, just a straight Control-C. If you're a Mac user, I don't know what that is, so you're on your own. But your Command-C, there you go. You're going to Control-C and copy directly from that platform. And then you're going to go back to your Google Sheet and you're going to paste it in there. So this is limiting the manual nature of writing out each tag, but you also get really good information that you can reference, such as like the trigger that the tag uses or the last time that it's edited. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a few additional columns, and the additional columns are going to be in this BFO orange along here. So the added columns, we're going to have our platform, which is, where this data is getting recorded. Right now, we only need to worry about GA tags, but make sure that you're labeling all of your tag platforms. And this will include things like Google Ads, Facebook, LinkedIn.
Good reason for that is because if you don't label your platform, and let's say that Google Ads tag you see at the bottom is in here without that label, you're going to look at analytics and you're going to wonder what this tag is, and you might just throw it away accidentally. And then your paid media team's going to come screaming at you. Yeah.
And we really, we actually really don't need to do anything with those tags just yet. We're mostly worried about Google Analytics. So let's take this steps at a time. And if you want to go through and then audit your advertising platform tags, I totally recommend doing that, but let's deal with GA4 first.
One step at a time.
Yeah. And then we're going to have a column for the keep, delete, or adjust. And this is basically just where you're going to make your ruling on the feature of that tag. Are you going to keep it? Are you going to retire it? Do you need to adjust it so that it fires better? Or, any one of those 3. Then we're going to have a reasoning column. This is the column of where you're going to keep notes as to why you're going to keep something or why you're deleting it. And we have a trigger translated column. So I know from GTM, we have this column that is for, that gives us the name of the trigger, but more than one person typically uses GTM, and naming conventions can differ, especially if they're not concise across all of those users. So what we're doing in this column is writing what the trigger actually does in plain English. So anyone can look at this and understand, oh, this tag fires here. And then the last one is firing properly. So we're going to go through a process of where we're testing for all of our tags to make sure that each tag is working properly. Or if it's not for some reason, you can put a simple yes or no in this last column. And then if there's anything additional that you need to know, you can put it in the reasoning column here. So let's get started. We're going to start out by filling out that platform column that you added. So again, we only need to worry about GA tags. So you can, after you do this, you can filter out anything that is not a GA tag and leave everything else for when you're done with GA. Then I recommend filtering that current tag status column. So this one here for only paused tags. And any tag that's been paused for a good amount of time, I typically use the rule of 4+ months. It can be labeled delete, or most likely can be labeled delete. The reason being is if you haven't needed that data in 4+ months, it's safe to say that you probably don't need it anytime soon, or it's a really low priority and you can convert it at a later date. After we make rulings on these pause tags, we're then going to start looking at the tags that that you've most recently touched. So start looking at your most recent tags and anything that you've set up in the past few months. You're most likely going to know that it's working properly because you've just set it up. So we just want to make sure that we're labeling anything that is recent. Most likely you're going to have it kept as keep, right? Because you just did all that work. If there's any recent tags that you don't specifically remember where they fire, or you don't know if they're firing properly, you can leave these other columns blank because in the testing process, you have that opportunity to continue to fill them out. And then we're going to undo all of those filters, and we're then just only going to filter for your Google Analytics tags again. And what you're going to do is you're going to start filling out this trigger translated column. And again, this is where you're taking that trigger and translating it into plain English. So what you're going to do for this column is you're going to go into GTM. You're going to find each tag that's on a separate row, and you're going to click specifically into that trigger to see how it fires. If you're able to understand where that trigger fires, then you can translate that trigger into in this column here. But let's say you use something like a click class and you don't know where that click class is located on your website. It's okay to leave it blank because again, during the testing part, you can fill that in. I'm talking about for really easy triggers. So let's say that you have a tag that is triggered on a specific page when someone clicks donate. In that trigger, you'll be able to see that you'll be able to write out, fires when a user is on this page and clicks donate. So translate what you can, but if you can't figure it out quite yet, just know that we're moving into the testing phase next, and you'll have an opportunity to continue to fill out this sheet. So once we've filled out everything as much as we can, that's where we're entering the testing phase. And this is arguably the most important part of the GTM cleanout. Is it manual? Yes. And is it time consuming? Also, yes, for sure. It is very time consuming, but it's also the best way to make sure that you're not creating more work for yourself down the road by converting tags from UA to GA4 that you don't need or don't work. So what I recommend doing is when you're starting your testing, start with your most recently created tags. You're more likely to know where to go to get those tags to fire, and you can just do a quick double check to make sure everything's firing properly.
Yeah. And it gets you comfortable with your testing process too, because you know those should work because they're new. And then as you reach problems later, you might reach problems later on. You've been through it a few times, so some of the nuances, it started to work itself out.
Plus, yeah, exactly. Plus, it's like if you have like a really long to-do list and you start crossing things off, it makes you feel good. So you just want to start, you just want to get started.
Yay, progress.
Exactly. So once you're going through your most recently created tags, make sure that you're filling out all of those additional orange columns. So you're going to make sure that you're rating whether you're going to keep them or delete them. You're translating that trigger. You're noting whether they work properly or not, everything. Then you're going to start working your way through the rest of the document, testing each tag. You just have to go for it. Don't be scared. It's going to be a long process. If you need to skip around, that's totally fine, but just start working your way down that document. And once you filter that sheet for only GA tags and only tags that you want to keep or adjust, this is now your full list of GA events that you want to migrate to GA4. So again, this is UA tags. We haven't yet gotten to GA4 quite yet. We just have those UA tags that we're going to migrate. And while you're going through this testing process, it's really important to think about, the current tagging sheet and note whether there's any way that you could combine multiple tags into one. An example came to my head when I was trying to think about how to explain this. And for that, it was, most people have more than one form on their site. So we need to start thinking about, if there was additional information that was passed, could I utilize one tag to measure all of those form submissions and cut down my work by not creating all, separate tags? And if I were to only have one tag, what would the unique identifiers be so that I could distinguish between them? My recommendation is to reference the automatically collected events and the enhanced measurement events, those guides that Google gave us, so we can see what parameters are being passed through those types of events and see whether we can reuse them in these events that we're looking to create. Would any of those parameters be useful to distinguish between these forms? And so, again, I just wanted to give you a quick example of those forms. These are all from the BFO website. We've got a contact us, get the guide, and a webinar form. And we're going to go a little bit into fantasy and just pretend that each one of these forms has the same exact fields, and they also have the same exact CTA. So it could just be submit or sign up or something like that, but pretend that all of these are consistent. Now, if I want to create one tag to measure all three of these, I need to figure out how to differentiate them. And let's say that each one of these forms is on its own unique page. So we could actually create just one form submission tag that fires when the CTA is clicked, and we could distinguish between these forms in a few different ways. One of them could be to add a secondary dimension of page location. So we're looking at the number of forms that are submitted, and then we're going to see what pages those forms were submitted on, because each one of these is on its own page. So by doing that, I would be able to say, oh, 15 form submissions happened on the Contact Us page, and I would be able to identify that form. You could also see if there's additional information that we would be able to capture when someone submits that form, such as a form ID or a form name, and we can add that as a custom parameter to that event. So when someone clicks, download the guide, we might be able to say, okay, and one of the parameters is form name. The form name is get the guide. Okay, all right, so we're done with our tagging audit. You've made it through. We're at the ending stages of but we still have 2 spreadsheets left. This is where we're going to start converting that list of UA events that you want to keep or adjust into a GA4 event sheet. So you're going to create this spreadsheet, and this is going to be that list of the GA4 tags that you need to set up. So you're going to use your current tags tab and filter only for GA tags and only for tags that you want to keep or adjust. And then you're going to start filling out this sheet here with that information. Again, yeah, that current tag sheet's great, but again, it's not converted to GA4 quite yet. So within this template that you're going to download, there's some additional columns like priority, description, condition. These are all going to help you understand the information that you need when you're creating your GA4 events. For each tag that's on your current tags tab, you're going to fill in a row on the GA4 events tab. So the current tags, and you're going to move that row over to the GA4 event sheet. And while you're exactly, yeah, unless you can combine tags, right? So you got to have a few things in your head. While you're doing this process, it's important to make sure that you're referencing the Google guides that I gave you guys up there a few slides ago, specifically for like the recommended events, to see if there's a structure that Google prefers. And by structure, I mean for the event name. So you might have a sign up for a profile or sign up for, whatever. Google has that listed in their recommended events. Then you're going to use that naming convention that they give you. You can also look to see if there's any parameters that they recommend that you add for that specific event. So they're kind of giving you a little bit of a guide. By doing this, what you're doing is following Google's best practices, and you're making sure that your setup isn't unnecessarily complicated by having a million different types of parameters that you have to remember those names. Try to use as few parameters as possible while still being able to get the data that you want.
And here's the risk. If you do this on the fly and you start thinking of parameters and you're trying to build out some of these event tags along the way on the fly, you're going to miss stuff and you're going to have to come back here and reconfigure. This becomes your blueprint for what you're building. And the key of having a blueprint is, guess what? When you're implementing that first row you see on here and all those parameters, you might actually start implementing in that and realize that you missed one, but at least you've got a checklist, something you can walk through, or you might have one extra, like, I really don't need video progress on this one. I can do without it. You'll be able to check yourself along the way. And then you can also track your work. If you're doing this with just pen and paper or on the fly because you think you need a tag, then you're probably going to end up making some mistakes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so just think about the additional information that you need and make sure that you're listing that out in the parameters section. You'll see things coming up over and over again, and try to reduce as much as possible, but don't sacrifice the data for sake of, limiting your parameters.
Rachel, the number of parameters won't affect performance, will it? Or does it?
No, it doesn't. You just have a limit of 25. And once you're done doing that, you've taken all of the tags off of that current tag sheet and you've put them into the GA4 event sheet. What you're going to do is you're going to sort this priority column, and then you're going to start actually tagging in Tag Manager from the highest priority to the lowest priority. Now, that's 2 out of the 3 spreadsheets that I was talking about. And I'm sure everyone's like, I thought we would be done by now. There's one more.
We're only 42 minutes in. We can't be finished yet.
So I really wanted to talk about a tagging matrix. I went to this really incredible analytics conference a few months ago, and there was this woman that was talking about a tagging matrix that she had implemented. And I immediately knew I was going to steal that idea. So I had to go up to her afterwards and let her know, like, this was brilliant. I can't believe I wasn't smart enough to figure this out. It apparently took her a while as well. So I didn't feel that bad afterwards. But yeah, after you've created this spreadsheet, there still is one more step that we want you to do. And that's going to be creating, again, that tagging matrix. So this is another template that you can use. But what we want, what this spreadsheet is going to help you with, it's going to help keep you organized, and it's going to save you time in the future. So if you ever have to audit your GTM tags again, you're going to have a lot better information to start working off of. And you're also going to get your company to implement this. So if anyone is interested in a certain data point, they enter that information into the spreadsheet here, and it'll give you all of the information that you need to create the tag. So anyone that is creating or that is requesting a tag is going to fill out those columns in blue. And then whoever is the tag creator is going to fill out the columns in orange. And when you download the template, there's more columns to the right, but it's for the sake of making it look pretty, everyone, just pretend that they're all there. But yeah, so this is going to help keep you a lot better organized, because you're no longer going to have to guess, where is this tag supposed to be going? What should the tag be doing? What should the tag be, like what condition should the tag fire on? But more importantly, who is requesting that tag? So again, when you're auditing your tags later on down the road, you can go through and say, hey, Sally, I saw that you requested this tag back in 2022. It's 4 years later. Are you still using it? And if Sally's not with your company anymore, you might be going to marketing then, her department, and say, are you guys still using this? If not, then it's safe to delete. If they are, then you know that you can keep that tag live.
Something I would add to this too, if you want to exercise a bit more control over the inputs in this sheet, think about putting a Google form on top of something like this so that you can control that Sally's putting it in. She has to put her name in, or you're collecting her email. The platforms to receive data can be a drop down. So you can pick, maybe you have 6 platforms that might receive data. Boom, pick the platform. What is the description? You get that information. You're controlling that information. Sally has a link to the form. Easy peasy. Then whoever's building the tag comes in and fills out the rest of the columns.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the process that we're using for our clients now too. All of these are drop downs. So they have an approved list of who can request the tag. If your name isn't on there, you got to go to someone that is able to request the tag, and then getting all of the rest of this information filled out. We didn't do that drop down portion for you because obviously this will be specific to your business. So make sure that, if you have any questions on how to do those drop downs, a quick Google and that'll save you. But yeah, that was it. We just wanted to share with you guys how you could think about events now in GA4, what a process would look like from converting UA tags to GA4 tags. And really the key is just break it down into smaller chunks. Try and make it manageable and don't be intimidated.
Rachel, the stepwise process that you laid out for making this happen it's absolutely brilliant. I love the way that it starts and builds, and you're not just leaning on one spreadsheet and making this monster sheet. It's build the first sheet, understand where your audit's at, then figure out what that looks like in GA4. And now from there, okay, you've got all that stuff, but now going forward, let's keep it clean by building out a tagging matrix that everybody in the organization can use going forward. And we, as the analytics department or the tag manager police, we get to control the flow of what's coming in rather than somebody from marketing reaching out and saying, hey, you know what, I need to add some tags. Can I have access to Tag Manager? And then you look in there 6 months later and what is this garbage that they put in here? Or maybe it didn't use or didn't fire. This gives you control in the organization to understand what's being migrated and then controlling the future of what gets implemented. And to Rachel's point too, you can start looking at when those tags, not just when they were requested, but also when they were implemented, and start thinking about, can I retire some of these? And you've got that inventory.
Yes, exactly. I've actually, I'm loving this new tagging matrix. I've noticed that it's cut down on emails because people that want tags then are able to give me all of the information that I need all in one go versus me writing back to them and saying, what page is that on? Should it fire here or should it fire there? So hopefully this will help you keep inbox zero, or at least limit the number of emails that you're getting about just like one tag that you have to do.
Inbox closer to zero.
Yeah, I'm still hoping for it. But let's pause. And I know that this is fairly complicated and there's probably lots of questions. So we're going to get through as many questions as we can, I think, in the next few minutes. And anything else, Kyle, you're going to record those, and we'll try to answer them after, I'm assuming.
Yeah. But you know what? I don't know if it's that you've been so thorough or that the audience is just like chomping at the bit to get started, but we don't have any open questions. And I've been keeping an eye on it. Everyone has been here for the entire webinar. And I think either you were just incredibly thorough or questions are probably going to come once they get that spreadsheet you put together and they start tagging from their own end.
Totally. Yeah. And I know that this can be really confusing and it can feel very technical. So no problems if you guys don't have questions now. Download the template, see if you want to get started. If you felt completely lost in this webinar, you're not alone. I'm sure there's many people out there that are still confused about what they need to do. Just know that we're here to help, and we do these migrations a lot for clients. So we can help you through that process in several different capacities, helping your team, walking them through how to do it, or handing the reins over to us and full white glove service delivery of where we come in and we do all of this for you. So with that,
to repeat what we say in all the other webinars, if you've got a question, ask us. We're probably going to answer it. We're here to help. We want to share this knowledge. We want to help you migrate. A lot of times it's not whether or not you're paying us, it's that we can help and we want to be able to give back to this community. If you reach a point where you do need a lot more help, we might ask you for some money. It's just the way it works out. Or if you think you've got a project, reach out in advance and say, hey, I'd like to get this migration done. We can plan that, we can execute it. But again, we're not shy about answering individual questions or one-offs or having a 10 or 15-minute conversation to help direct your efforts.
We do have one quick one that just came in from Fred. Can you do a follow-up in about 2 weeks after we get lost in the spreadsheet?
Oh my God, I love this. I wish my partner could hear that question because I'm constantly confusing him with spreadsheets. Fred, that's a great question. This can get really specific to your business. So once you get lost on the spreadsheets, if you do, feel free to email me on the side and I'm more than happy to help you where I can for sure. Excellent question though.
Yeah, I know. As Rachel was saying, this is very complicated and complex. And, knowing that many people on the call are probably anticipating getting started, we know questions are going to come up. So to help you all out, we assumed you were taking notes. Yes, you're an overachiever. Yes, that's okay. But have no fear. We are going to send along all of this stuff to you. So everyone on the call can expect an email that will include a recording of this video. You'll get a link to the downloads of the slides. I know Rachel had been linking things inside of the presentation itself, so you will have access to that, the tag implementation plan template, and you will have an invitation to our September webinar. Little plug is if you're not thinking about holiday yet, you probably should. So be on the lookout. We have our September webinar called Holiday Planning Starts Now. Stay ahead of your goals coming down the pipeline, and you will all be clued in on that. And we hope to see you there as well.
Yeah, that's being led by my counterpart, Curtis. We always laugh because people don't think far enough advance about holiday season. So if you think that September is too early to be thinking about the holidays, you should definitely go to that webinar for sure.
Yep. I was joking on another call earlier today. I worked marketing at an internal company where we would start product and packaging development in March, for holiday. So it should always be top of mind to some degree, but yeah, more to come on that. If that's something that interests you, and it should, we highly recommend you join that one because Curtis is also a lot of fun and just as smart.
Yeah, he's way more fun than me. Okay, well, yeah, thank you so much everyone for coming and participating. I hope that this was useful. And again, if you have any questions, make sure to reach out to us. We're definitely happy to help you.
Yep. Thank you all for your time today and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks.